There's a certain alertness that never fully turns off. Not panic, not fear, just a quiet readiness. You feel it when you enter a room, when someone's tone shifts slightly, when silence lasts a moment longer than expected. Your body notices before your mind does. You don't remember learning this. You only know it's always been there. Even now, as an adult, part of you is scanning, tracking, listening for what isn't being said. You tell yourself it's intuition or sensitivity or just who you are. But sometimes you wonder why rest feels unfamiliar, why calm situations still carry tension, why safety doesn't always register as safety. You can be surrounded by people and still feel alone, not isolated, unseen. There's a strange contradiction there. You're good at understanding others, you notice moods quickly, you adapt easily, yet when it comes to yourself, something feels postponed, like you're always a step behind your own needs. You learned early how to stay quiet, how to not add to the noise, how to make yourself small enough not to cause disruption. Not because someone told you to, because it felt necessary. You remember watching faces closely, listening carefully, trying to anticipate reactions before they happened. That vigilance didn't feel like effort back then. It felt like survival. You learned how to read a room before you learned how to relax inside one. And that skill followed you into friendships, into relationships, into every space where connection was supposed to feel natural. People often describe you as mature, wise beyond your years. Grounded, they don't see the cost of that grounding. They don't feel how quickly your energy shifts when emotions rise around you. How instinctively you move towards stabilizing things. How rarely you wait for someone to stabilize you. You've noticed how uncomfortable you feel when someone asks, "What do you need?" The question catches you off guard, not because you don't have needs, because naming them feels risky. You hesitate, you deflect, you say you're fine, and in many ways you are. You function well, you handle responsibility, you stay composed when others fall apart. But there's a subtle fatigue beneath it, a tiredness that doesn't come from doing too much. It comes from never fully letting go. You notice how quickly you sense emotional undercurrents, how easily you pick up tension that others miss, how your body reacts before words are spoken. And you also notice how often you dismiss your own reaction. You tell yourself you're overthinking, that you're being sensitive, that you should let things go. You've been doing that for as long as you can remember, letting things go before they ever had a chance to land. You rarely ask for comfort directly, not because you don't want it, because you don't trust it to arrive when you need it. So you become self-sufficient, not proudly, quietly. You learn how to sit with discomfort without showing it, how to process internally instead of reaching outward, how to stay functional even when something feels off. Others admire this about you. They see strength. They don't see the isolation that comes with it. You notice how difficult it is to fully relax in relationships, how part of you stays alert even in moments of closeness, how you anticipate disappointment before it happens. You don't expect much. Expectation feels dangerous, so you keep your hopes measured, your emotions contained, your needs minimal. You've told yourself this is maturity or realism or independence, and maybe it is, but sometimes in quieter moments, a question surfaces. Why did I learn to carry so much on my own? Why does relying on others feel unnatural? Why does emotional closeness sometimes feel heavier than distance? You don't have answers yet, only patterns. You notice how you're drawn to people who need support, how you instinctively take on the role of listener, how you rarely feel comfortable being the one held. When someone tries to get close to your inner world, you feel exposed, not seen, exposed, as if something essential might be taken or misunderstood. So you keep layers. You share selectively. You reveal gradually. You stay in control of what others can access. That control doesn't feel manipulative. It feels protective. You're often told you're strong. But strength wasn't a choice. It was a response. And responses learned early have a way of becoming invisible. You don't think of yourself as someone who lacked anything. You had food, structure, people around, but something subtle was missing. Something that never had a name. You didn't learn how to be comforted. You learned how to cope. You didn't learn how to rest inside connection. You learned how to remain steady within uncertainty. And now, years later, those lessons still shape how you move through the world. You feel safest when you're the one who understands, when you're the one who notices, when you're the one who stays composed. But being that person all the time comes at a cost you don't usually acknowledge, because acknowledging it would require stopping, and stopping has never felt like an option. Yet something is shifting. You're starting to notice the gap between how capable you appear and how alone that capability can feel. You're beginning to sense that the traits people admire in you didn't form in comfort. They formed in absence. But that truth hasn't fully surfaced yet. For now, it lingers quietly in the way you stay alert even when things are calm, in the way you hesitate to lean on anyone, in the way you've learned to be emotionally precise instead of emotionally free. And somewhere beneath all of that, a question waits. What exactly did you learn to become when no one was there to hold the emotional weight for you? Over time, you start noticing that what others call distance isn't what it feels like from inside you. It doesn't feel like pulling away. It feels like staying intact. When emotions rise around you, something in you tightens, not to shut down, but to hold steady. You become quieter, more contained, less expressive. From the outside, that restraint can look like coldness, like withdrawal, like indifference. But internally, you're working harder than anyone realizes. You're managing layers, your reaction, their reaction, the possible outcomes of both. This is where the misunderstanding lies. People assume that being less expressive means feeling less, that staying composed means being untouched. But you feel everything. You just learned very early that feeling openly wasn't always safe. So instead of expressing emotion, you organized it. You learned how to carry intensity without letting it spill, how to read situations without drawing attention to yourself, how to be emotionally present without becoming emotionally exposed. That skill didn't come from confidence. It came from necessity. And here is where the midpoint quietly turns. What looks like emotional distance now is not the absence of attachment. It's the presence of self-containment. You're not stepping away because you don't care. You're stepping inward because you've learned that stability starts there. This realization is unsettling because it reframes everything. The traits you developed weren't signs of resilience chosen freely. They were adaptations formed when emotional protection wasn't available. You became observant because unpredictability required it. You became self-reliant because support wasn't consistent. You became calm because chaos needed someone to stay upright. And once those traits formed, they didn't disappear when circumstances improved. They became your identity. This is the psychological truth in the final third. Empaths who were not emotionally protected as children often develop traits that look like strength but function as armor. They don't collapse easily. They don't depend readily. They don't expect others to hold them. They hold themselves. That self-holding is impressive, but it's also heavy. It means you rarely experience the relief of being fully met. It means you often feel safest when you're the most composed person in the room. It means closeness can feel threatening, not because of fear, but because it asks you to release control you learn to keep. You don't lean back easily. You don't let yourself be fully seen all at once, not because you're guarded, because exposure once meant vulnerability without protection. So your system learned to pace connection carefully. That pacing can look like emotional distance, but it's actually discernment shaped by experience. You know how quickly depth can turn into overwhelm. You know how easily openness can become obligation. You know the cost of being uncontained in spaces that can't hold you. So you stay precise, You offer empathy without surrender, presence without collapse, care without dependence, and that balance is rare. It's also lonely because people who haven't lived this way often don't know how to meet you. They expect more expression, more need, more openness. They don't realize that your quiet strength came from learning to survive without emotional shelter. That you didn't grow strong because you were protected. You grew strong because you weren't. This doesn't mean you're broken, but it does mean your nervous system, though steady, never learned